Welcome, Ian Gillan.
Hello.
And bassist, Roger Glover. Good to see you both.
Good evening. Morning. Evening.
Anytime you like.
Good day.
What's it feel like to you? I mean, you've been flying overnight to get here, so you've got to be a little weary, I guess.
Well,
no, don't do that.
what does it look like? Actually, I feel pretty good.
Good. Well, it's good to see you both, and it's good that you're back in Australia.
Yeah, great to be here.
What caused this resurgence? Why did you suddenly decide you wanted to come back and do it all again? I mean, you've been doing it all over the world, haven't you?
Well, I mean, as far as Australia is concerned, we got invited, and I think very little in our life happens that we have any control over, and every now and again you get a wee bonus. And we have a band meeting once a year, and the only result of that is that we realise the futility of trying to exert any influence over our future. So we just go where we're told, and here we are.
Could you explain why very little in your life you have any control over? I'm sorry.
Well, if I could, I don't know. I think it's because we placed a focus on the music in the early days. We were just enthusiastic musicians, and then there's this oxymoronic thing called the music business, and you have to coexist with the business. We don't like all of it, and we have to fit in with some of it, and we have to compromise, but that generally takes care of things.
What don't you like about it?
Well, I think all the middle stuff is fine. The stuff we come into contact with day by day is fine. But what I intensely dislike about it is the invisible nature of is the disloyalty, if you like, the invisible nature of the power behind the throne. I think this happens in big business a lot. We're used to shaking hands and looking at each other in the eye and saying, well, this is how it's going to be. And if you don't like it, you say to somebody. But I know lots of people whose lives have been ruined and careers have been changed because of a decision by an invisible person behind the scenes. There's only 5 record companies left in the world now, and each one of those is changing hands day by day. The beginning of all this is a lot different to the way it is now.
Is this a fairly complex way of saying you don't trust people?
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
Pretty much. The reason why you start being in a band in the first place is, well, I'd say, I can really talk from my point of view, is you love music. There's something about music. I grew up in school feeling very passionate about pop music, as it was then. Rock and roll. I remember what rock and roll did to the country. You know, before rock and roll, it was pretty boring. Bill Haley happened, and Elvis Presley, and Little Richard, and Buddy Holly. It happened very quickly. And it transformed everything. And it, for me, as I was then an early teenager, it was mind-boggling. And I just wanted to be, involved in some way in music. I think that's the fun part of it. But then business becomes a part of it. You are part of a business, and necessarily, as Ian said, you have to work with it. You can't have one without the other.
Were you manipulated by the business and people in it?
Yes. You always have to do favours for people. The publishing side of things, I remember very early on, the first song we ever recorded, and the first song I'd written that was recorded, I knew this guy was a publisher, and I went to him and said, will you publish my song? He said, sure. And then I found out that I was not free to go to him, that I had to toe the record company line, and they had to have the publishing. So I had to, with cap in hand, go back to my friend and say, look, I can't give you the publishing, I have to do it. So there's certain things you have to do.
Did it cost you money?
I don't think I earned anything from that song, so I don't think it cost me any money. But I think, if you start selling records, I know I'm reading the Elvis Presley book now, and some of the deals.
Which one?
The second of the 2 volumes, Careless Love. And the deals that were made on the publishing side of it by the publishing house and Colonel Parker were just amazing. I mean, Elvis couldn't record a song without him somehow having part of the publishing.
Do you find yourself surprised at that? I would have thought you would have experienced precisely the same thing. Didn't management get at you a bit?
Well, I think the thing is that when you start, you take 5 average guys from a council estate on who've never eaten in a restaurant, never been in a hotel, stuff their pockets full of money, and put their faces on the front of every magazine.
Send them straight to hell.
Send them straight to hell, yeah. But I mean, I think the idea is that you're ill-prepared for anything like that, and so you come from a very trusting... You're like kids. you're very trusting because you've grown up in a trusting world. People say things and you can believe them, and all of a sudden you're in a different world where your illusions are shattered in a very short time. And you either develop the cynicism or a paranoia, if you like, or you develop very quickly a very thick skin, that's for sure. And you find it very difficult to know who to trust or whatever. So you speak in guarded terms for a long time. And I think the idea of the financial side, none of us were prepared for that, the kind of wealth and whatever that came about. So I dismissed the whole thing. I wrote a letter to my manager saying I want to be paid in beads from now on, and I don't want to deal with all this. But I figured it all out, that, you know, 72% of my money goes on commissions and tax, and another 27.5%, 23.5%, 22.5% goes on other things, and the remaining 0.5 of 1% I spend on booze and wild living. So.
And the rest you waste.
That's right.
Is that the way it is, really?
Not with him, no.
Why?
He's a little more organised, I think.
In what way? How are you better organised? Are you richer than him?
Actually, I don't know.
Do you care?
The thing is, we all started on the same level. We all came from fairly similar backgrounds. And the initial success of the band was, I mean, you talked about 130 million records. I can't imagine that myself. And I certainly don't, I can't doubt that, I can't prove it either, but it doesn't seem right to me that it was that many records. But we've, since that time, since 1969, we've all had different careers. You know, Ian and I left the band 4 years later. The band carried on. We had the reunion. We were all in different bands, and you know, the state of the band now is it's not really a band. It's 5 individuals who live all over the different states of the world, different parts of the world, and but we have this shared spirit that's still there. And when we get together, that spirit remains. So the business side of it really doesn't intrude on what we do. You know.
There's only one original member missing, isn't there? Mm-hmm. Was that an uncomfortable breakup with Richie?
Yeah, I think so. If you can draw the parallel with a family, as the band is now and was then, when things start going wrong in a family, it's hard to imagine or perceive anything outside of that. You just have to deal with the problems, and you can't just shut the door and pretend it's not happening, because you have to perform and make records and all that sort of thing. So it gets difficult, and you stifle, you compromise, and in anything for a quiet life. You stay together for the sake of the kids, if you like, and then all of a sudden things get really bad, and bang, Richie left, and we were in a terrible situation at the time, leading up to his departure.
Was he as difficult as we were led to believe?
I'd have to say, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, we all agree on this, that he was intransigent and made life very difficult. So...
do you stay in touch with him?
No. No,
Actually,
life is good now.
There wasn't a great deal of communication, even when he was in the band.
Why?
Certainly in the last few years.
Just a different personality.
Yeah, it's. I think he sort of set himself up as the leader of the band in a kind of negative way. It wasn't so much he told the band what to do; he just told the band what he wouldn't do. And there's no questioning it, you know.
Yeah. So it was pretty acrimonious, this termination.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
He's making his own music, and he's. You know, he was a very important member of this band. He I think very early on stamped his personality on the band, and it really was a very strong one. And the band wouldn't have been the same without him, obviously. But at the same time, no one is bigger than the band, and I think the band's gone on to be something else without him.
And since Steve Moss has joined, I mean, it's just incredible now. It's just...
Yeah, we didn't want a replacement for Richie. We wanted someone who was going to be himself, and Steve has really fit that bill very well.
Good. We'll take a little break here. Please don't go away, and I'll come back in a moment or two. My very special guests, Roger Glover and Ian Gillan from Deep Purple. Were the days as wild as we all hoped they were?
Yeah. I think we didn't think they were wild at the time, but I mean, we were unleashed, really. As I said, when you're that age, you're immortal anyway. You think you're immortal. And you have a certain power, if you like. You're free financially. You can do an awful lot of things. But you also have this amazing confidence. And, I mean, it crosses over into many aspects of life. Not only musical, but into your behaviour patterns as well. And you don't realise sometimes, it takes a little while to grow up. I mean, you do behave like cretins at times. I did, certainly, many times.
Did
every
you?
day.
Yeah. I was a fairly shy teenager, and joining a band, I think Ian said the right word, it empowers you. You have a certain power. You're in the band, and if you're in the band,
That's it.
you can pretty much do anything you want because there are people there to protect you, to get you out of any mess you get into.
Did you abuse the power?
Probably.
Not knowingly, but probably, yeah. Yeah, I think it was... I don't think there was any unkindness. Let's put it that way. I don't think there was anything other than, wow, you know, like running loose in a chocolate factory. I think that's basically what it was. I mean,
I think I just fell in love a lot.
yeah. Yeah. Quite meaningfully. Yeah.
We were talking about those
Yeah.
delayed guitar solos.
Extended guitar solos, yes.
Extended. You didn't particularly mind if the guitar solo went on for a while.
Not always, no. There was always something to do. I mean, it was...
Something to do.
I know what you were getting at.
Well, I just have to ask you, the story, the legend is
Yeah.
that during one of those lengthy guitar solos of Ritchie's, that you clambered under a Steinway, and I suppose there just happened to be a woman there.
Well, no,
I guess they
actually.
just lay round under Steinways.
Yeah, littered with them. Interesting thought. But in fact, I remember this thing being on the stage because we weren't allowed to remove it. It was the theatre Steinway.
Talking about the girl or the piano?
Yeah, there was a fixation. It was a fixture, and they had this green canvas cloth over it that was so far from the ground, and the solo looked as if it was one of those nights you couldn't quite tell how long it was going to be. So I thought I better not go down the pub that night, so there was a girl standing on the side of the stage. So we leapt under the Steinway, and I think it was a very nice solo.
Yeah, well, so it's true. What you're telling me is true.
Yeah, it's all true. Yeah.
I never heard with you blokes much about drugs. Heard an awful lot about booze. What about drugs? Did you get in
We were pretty much a drug-free band.
Pretty much. We were totally drug-free, actually, in those days.
Well, I was known as a stinking hippie because I'd actually had a joint.
Oh, you'd had a joint, yeah, that's right.
But no, we were a drinking band. My favourite drink was a bottle of can of Coke, pour a little half of it out and fill it up with scotch.
That's what we used to do.
And
We weren't allowed to take alcohol in a lot of the clubs in the early days, so we used to take this Scotch and Coke. That's how it became a musician's drink, because it just looked like a bottle of Coke, but it would really be Scotch and Coke.
So did you spend quite a lot of time on stage drunk?
Actually, no. You can't really play very well when you're drunk. More importantly, you can't hear very much. I've been on stage drunk, and you can hear everything, but you can't hear it in balance. So you've got no really clue what's going on. But you'd have a little bit of, a certain amount just to loosen up to get on stage, but the real drinking always took place afterwards.
We developed a great tolerance to alcohol, and we were very rarely drunk. We just drank a lot, and there's a big difference.
By the sound of it, to sit here and talk about it now and laugh about it now because you both have a sense of humour about it, which is terrific. It all sounds like it was up all the time. But did you ever get moments of depression?
Oh, yeah.
About what?
Yeah. I remember once going nuts. We were on one of these endless American tours where you play 5 or 6 nights a week, different place every night, and for months on end. And I think I had a bit of a nervous breakdown. I just went crazy one night. I said something and no one listened to me, and I lost my temper, put my fist through a window. And I think I was going through something then. I was pretty depressed about it.
What about you, Ian?
Well, I quit the business in '73. I decided I'd had enough, and I left the band after giving them 9 months' notice, and I just quit totally. And I had a recording studio. Well, not totally, because I had a recording studio in London, so I was involved on the periphery with semi-productions and things like that, but really wasn't that interested in it. And I got involved in motorbikes and other things, and didn't even think about it until Rog invited me to the Royal Albert Hall. He was doing a production of The Butterfly Ball, which he'd written, and somebody hadn't turned up for one of the parts. So he phoned me I think a day or two before and said, "Can you help me out, mate?" Yeah, no problem. So I went along in my suit and my short hair, and Vincent Price
didn't recognise you.
They did, actually. He walked on stage and the place erupted.
Yeah,
it was a great welcome.
I didn't know what was going on. I thought Vincent Price was narrating from the organ loft in this great peacock chair, I remember, and we were talking in the bar afterwards, and he said, "I didn't know what was happening." I said, "Well, I didn't know what was happening either." I said, "It's just amazing." And he said, "It was for you." And I said, "I know." I was very emotional, and I suddenly realised, oh, it's the stupidest thing I've ever done. You know, I've got this thing all wrong. I think, you know, just because I can't imagine that I could achieve any more success or achieve anything more musically than I have with Deep Purple, that doesn't mean to say I can't enjoy music. And so I wrote 4 songs the next day and put myself in the studio and very clumsily got back into the business, tripping over all the way, but not following any of the rules, rebelling and not wanting to fit in. There's something had happened inside me during those early years with Purple that turned me into a rebel forever.
Are you still?
Yeah, absolutely.
How does your family handle that?
Oh, I'm a pussycat when I get home, you know. I mean, that's not a problem in that sense. Musical rebel. I mean against the business and that sort of thing. If people say black, I say white, whatever. And I don't mean it harmfully, and I'm a good team player. If we're all sort of going on, we take a vote in this band on anything, and if one person says they don't want to do it, we don't do it. So it's there's no problem there, but I have fairly aggressive views on most things.
We'll seek out some of those aggressive views, maybe, after we have a short break. We'll be back in a moment or two. Roger Glover and Ian Gillan are my guest from Deep Purple. If we could turn back the clock, and this is all hypothetical, but it's fun, because it gives us an opportunity to play a bit I want to play. Mm-hmm. And we went back to 1970, and it was now, you fellas were, as you were in 1970, and you were starting now. Would it work? Or was it just that it happened to happen at the right time?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I certainly think it was a right place, right time thing. I mean, there's a great deal of luck involved in whatever a hit record. So many different things conspire to make a hit record, most of which is luck, timing, and just being around the right people. You know, being around. It's a very good thing to surround yourself with very talented people. It's a good trick.
Yeah, but it's a little more than a trick. It takes a bit of talent to recognise the other talent, doesn't it?
Well, it does.
Yeah.
Being a team player and all that sort of thing is important. And I think it would work musically if it happened now. But I think the key thing that we've learnt over the years, and this is beyond our control, because we made no attempt to artificially create any image. We weren't image conscious. And that, I think, is something that's vital for today's acts. You've got to be, I mean, on the button. We've never been any good at that. We haven't got a clue.
Just to refresh our memories, and I want to see it anyway, let's just have a look at a little bit of Black Knight, which I think was 1970. If you brought that out now and did it just like that, do you think it'd work?
I don't see why not.
I think it
sounded pretty good.
I think you're right. You know, the interesting thing is that the music that works for me is anything that comes with as few controls on it as possible. We always say have this thing, you know, that the monitor mixes sound great. As soon as it goes through the mixing process, you put about 19 things down the line and everything comes out like that. It may have this wonderful fairy dust all over it, but it hasn't got that impact. So if you listen to people playing directly, if you listen to Lennon or Hendrix or the Beatles or any of those, or the Kinks, or, you know, how it was then, and you're seeing the artistry coming through, or the foolishness, the nakedness. I think that's the important thing. And that's what I like about folk music and things like that.
Yeah, and that's the difference.
It may work, yeah. I think my daughter's 15 now, and she's lost interest in... We haven't had a music paper in the house for 2 years. She came to me the other day and she was asking if I had any Peggy Lee records, because she's got a rehearsal band, wanted to do a version of Fever. I said, no, but I've got the Elvis version. It's not too bad. It'll at least give you the chords and everything, you know. And they're searching for all those things. And you look at music as it has been, and that horrible thing that happened in the 80s, which was overproduction.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that.
Sorry.
Doesn't it still exist? Doesn't it still exist, overproduction?
I think it
Maybe.
does on a pop level.
Yeah.
You know, you get the pretty boys and the pretty girl bands. You know, and they're a product. They're a manufactured product.
Yeah, well, you go back to what you were saying about the 80s, because that's when it started, didn't it?
Yes, it did. I mean, it all started with this, you know, you got the Stock Aitken Waterman thing. It was the backlash of all these spandex-type journalists started turning up at the gigs, and what's that? And, you know, magazines like Katwang and all these things started coming out, and all of a sudden it was a whole new industry that you were just dragged along with, and you had no say in it anymore in terms of the marketing, and you became imaged by that whole thing. So then everyone decided this is the way to do it. It's packaged, so let's do the dance market, let's do the heavy metal market, let's do this market, and segregate them all. There were radio shows now not playing a cross-section of music, or, you know, it was devoted solely to this. So, and you're eating steak, or beans, you know. And Stock Aitken Waterman, I know they used to write 10, 12 tracks. Great guys. But, you know, drove me crazy, this. And they'd get 10 different kids into the studio, each singing different tracks. When one became a hit, the rest of them were dumped on the street, and that kid then sang the remainder of the 10 tracks, and that was their first album. And that's how it worked.
Can you still do the scream?
Just some of it, yeah.
Would you do it?
Well, in the cold light of the studio, no, I don't think so. No. It's like, no, that's no.
It's like trying to make a guitar sound good without an amplifier.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the energy that you get on stage comes from the audience. You know, in a cold studio, that doesn't happen. And in fact, when we make records, that is one of the problems. You're making records in a cold studio, and without that audience there.
Well, I suppose we'll just have to follow you around the world and find the scream along the way.
Well, I scream in different places every night anyway. It's just when I feel like it.
You're still doing that, huh?
Oh, yeah. There's not a problem. It's just that it's you know, you pluck one small part from your life and focus on it, and it becomes a big issue, and it's no big deal.
Great to talk to you.
Thanks a lot.
Roger, thank you very much.
Cheers, John.
It was terrific to talk to both of you. And you are here to perform, and we will make sure that everybody who's watching us are notified of the Deep Purple dates, and you can see them on your screen now. And that's all we have in the program for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope we can talk to each other tomorrow night. Till then, thank you very much. Good night.